You don't have to travel very far in Australia to realise that the trees and bushes are particularly loud. Unlike the delicate twittering of European or North American songbirds, the birds making their presence so vocally known across Australia are significantly larger, generally very colourful, almost invariably excruciatingly loud, and to the untrained and unkind ear, sound as though they've been smoking a pack a day for at least 2 or 3 centuries. There are over 400 species of parrots found mostly in tropical or subtropical regions, and generally restricted to the southern hemisphere. Unlike the marsupials, it is believed that parrots evolved around 60 million years ago on the continent of Gondwana, specifically the region that would later go on to form Australasia. However, parrots are weirdly rare in the fossil record, so there are some difficulties in confirming this hypothesis. As a rule, they are generally very social birds, but as you can clearly see in the case of this Australian ringneck, they can occasionally be found independently with no particular apparent ill effects. The Australian ringneck was actually the first true parrot we observed in Australia, and every individual we did observe was of the Port Lincoln subspecies. What we found most astonishing in our observations, however, were the striking blue patches on its head, wings, and cowl. Blue is normally quite a rare coloration, but many of the true parrots we observed displayed it, although perhaps none of them displayed it quite so flamboyantly as our next species, the rainbow lorikeet. An adult rainbow lorikeet is about 30 centimetres long and can weigh slightly less than 160 grams. And, as you can clearly see, the rainbow epithet is very well earned. The bill of a juvenile rainbow lorikeet is a black colour, which is a little difficult to distinguish from the similarly shaded head. However, the bright orange beak of the adults contrasts nicely, giving an excellent opportunity to observe the beak shape which is so typical of parrots. The prototypical parrot bill is comparatively unspecialised, which may be a consequence, or perhaps a driving force, behind the evolution of the parrot's intelligence. While the bill itself is a relatively rigid structure, like that of most birds, unlike most other birds, the upper bill is not attached to the skull, allowing it to be moved independently, granting a huge amount of dexterity, and also contributing to the quite substantial bite force these birds can exert compared to their body size. The hyacinth macaw, for example, of South America, can exert a bite force of up to 35 kilograms per centimetre squared, comparable to the bite force of a large dog, all while weighing around 1.5 kilos. Unlike most parrots, the rainbow lorikeets are generally not found in large social groups, typically only travelling together in pairs, which will occasionally flock together for feeding, only to disperse again shortly afterwards. They are also aggressively territorial, defending their nesting or feeding territories from birds up to and including the Australian magpie, which may be half again their size and double their weight. This aggression and the apparent ability to outcompete much larger species has led to the rainbow lorikeet being considered invasive in many regions of Australasia, and they're also considered a significant pest by fruit farmers, as a feeding flock of rainbow lorikeet can strip a tree of fresh fruit in a very short space of time. of the many and varied species with which the rainbow lorikeet competes is the musk lorikeet. Both the musk lorikeet and rainbow lorikeet are nectarivores and are among very few such species who have demonstrated sufficient ability to adapt both physiologically and neurologically to rapid urbanization, allowing them to colonize outer cities, where nectar-bearing species are regularly planted and maintained by humans, allowing them a more abundant and reliable food source. Our final two species of true parrots are, in actual fact, closely related to the Australian ringneck. Falling into the broad-tailed parrots tribe, the rosellas have a long and storied history of being misidentified, and indeed occasionally misnamed, but are currently identified as 6 broad species, most of which have several subspecies, most of which themselves have historically been considered separate species in their own right. Even mitochondrial DNA studies have been unable to work out exactly how the rosella populations interrelate to one another, leaving them to be categorised quite simply based on their cheek colour, namely blue, white or yellow. These eastern rosella, all filmed around Adelaide, are part of the eximius subspecies. The easiest way of identifying subspecies of rosella is by looking at the fringes of the feathers on their back. And this individual, posing beautifully, shows off the green fringes typical of the subspecies, as well as, once again, showing off the beautiful blue colour of some of the feathers on its wings and tail. The eastern rosella were the first species in the tribe to be described and encountered by Europeans, who called them the Rosehill parakeet after the area in which they were first encountered. Over time, this was shortened to Rosehilla, which, if transcribed by someone not immediately familiar with the Australian accent, is readily recognisable as Rosella, and was first written as such in 1893. The eastern rosella often feed in loose flocks, with little to distinguish the males from the females, and this lack of distinction between the sexes also extends to some social behaviours. Like many birds, the male will present the female with food in order to initiate courtship. However, unusually, the females will also engage in this behaviour, apparently presenting food to males whom they wish to attract the attention of. Our final true parrot observed in Australia was also the one that we had the most difficulty identifying. However, much like the eastern rosella, the exact classification of the crimson rosella also eluded scientists for quite some significant time. Our first spot was a subadult with its characteristic juvenile olive-green plumage slowly giving way to its adult red. But our second spot had a bright orange chest and head, with a blue chin, wings and tail, and dusty green back feathers, which these two individuals, one facing towards and the other away from the camera, exemplify perfectly. And finally, we spotted an individual that had the characteristic bright red plumage, with the blue chin, wing and tail, but lacking any of the green coloration. All of this led us to conclude that we were dealing with the Adelaide rosella, which made sense considering where we'd filmed them, and was until only a few years ago considered to be a separate species of rosella. Now, however, evidence is starting to emerge that the Adelaide rosella subspecies has yet to develop distinctively to this point, and is instead considered a hybrid swarm. The coloration of the Adelaide rosella is a result of the hybridization between the crimson rosella, which resides to the south of the Adelaide rosella range, and the yellow rosella subspecies, which resides to the north. Both true subspecies continue to interbreed with one another and with the Adelaide swarm, resulting in significant colour variation across the range.